welcome you to the panel that deals with safeguarding democracy and safeguarding parliamentary elections in Moldova this autumn. Actually, not more than some days have passed, one week and some days from the electoral day. So we are here to give feedback on those questions, how the elections were prepared in Moldova, and what were the interference cases, what was the situation in Moldova and for Moldovan people and for Moldovan friends. Because we know that in recent years, following both presidential and parliamentary elections, in several cases, Moldova has repeatedly adjusted the overall course of its foreign and security policy. And in 2024, for the first time of history, a pro-European integration president was re-elected. So it wasn't first time when now 2025 the pro-European choice was re-elected, but reaffirmed. But since the early 1990s, Russia has sought to fully control Moldova's political progress and processes, and has developed a broad toolbox of influence operations to achieve this. This is what we would like to speak about, and how explain also how Moldova and Moldovan friends have managed to overcome and face and fight with this toolbox, and to share this experience, because Moldova is not the case alone. We are all facing the same interference attempts in our homes, in our countries, for our elections. My name is Kersti Luha. I am an expert and strategy advisor for Praktnet, a small NGO, International Practitioners Partnership Network, in longer words. And our aim is to support building resilience via building capabilities and capacities in Stratcom, in fighting foreign malign interference, and strengthening societal cohesion and awareness about the impacts of malign interference. And with me in the panel are experts who have been working with us, and with whom we have made acquaintances and good cooperation in Moldova. It is Alina Radu, an investigative journalist and manager of Ziarul de Garda, ZDG. I hope that you have heard of this investigative house in Moldova that is the largest investigative reporting outlet. Alina is leading, and she can help us to understand what is the situation of societal understanding of media, and what is the real investigative media capable of in Moldova. Tarmo Jüristo. Tarmo is a civil society activist and founder in Estonia. He has founded Liberal Citizen Foundation, shortly SALK, which advocates for liberal values, open society, minority rights and free media in Estonia and across Europe. And he previously has also served as chairman of the board of think tank Praxis in Estonia. And Tarmo has played a significant role in Estonian debates on democracy, civil partnerships, and human rights. And Andrei Curararu, public policy analyst and co-founder of WatchDog Moldova, is a policy researcher and disinformation analyst with experience for more than 15 years in the field, advising policymakers and exposing hybrid threats in Moldova. And he's also a widely known commentator for not only Moldovan, but also international media. But to start with, to explain what are the general trends and what is the situation in Moldovan society, what the society in Moldova was facing prior to the elections. We turn to the data, and the data man in our team is Tarmo. So let's start with an overview on general trends in Moldovan society, and then we will add up with different other insights with other teammates.
Thank you. Is it on? Yes, now it's on. Thank you, and good morning to everyone. The bar was set pretty high by Kersti, so that I should talk about the general trends in Moldovan society. So I'll scale it back a little, and first let's get started with the situation that Moldova is facing in a run-up to the this year's election. So. The thing to keep in mind was that there was two elections or election referendum last year in Moldova. And this is where there was just to get to the heart of things. So the surprising thing that did happen last year in Moldova was that there was a pretty significant double-digit polling miss. And this was unusual, as I hear from my friends in WatchDog, that historically the election polls and polls in general used to be pretty precise and trustworthy in Moldova on average. Of course, there's always been different pollsters and things like this. But last year, the surprising thing was that they were wrong, and they were wrong in a major way. So what was wrong there was that, I mean, every one of us has probably heard that polls have had difficult times predicting the outcomes of US elections and so on. But in case of US election, the polling misses have been in the order of magnitude smaller, so around 2-3 percentage points. So in Moldova last year, they were, depending on a region, depending on the subgroup of population, 10-15 percentage points off. And they were off in a particular way that the polls were showing that the EU referendum will pass by a significant margin. In the end, it ended up passing by about 20,000 votes, which is a very, very narrow margin. The same thing happened with the second round of the presidential election, where Maia Sandu was predicted being far ahead. In the end, she did win, but by a lot smaller margin against Alexander Stoyanoglu than, again, the polls were indicating. And that was something that did clearly worry a lot of people in Moldova this year. So the situation was prior to the elections. So the polls were running, from the beginning of, from the end of last year, and they showed PAS being in a comfortable lead. So if you look at the data from August, from CBS polling data, then PAS was predicted within the country. I'm disregarding the diaspora vote right now, being ahead about 52 percentage points. And diaspora is, of course, strongly pro-European. So this would have meant that PAS will win by a landslide. If you have taken a look at the election results, then in the end, that was PAS did win majority, but that was 50.16% together with diaspora. Without diaspora, the actual end result for PAS was 44%, 44.2% in Moldova itself. While again, I remind you that in the end of August, the polls were showing that PAS will get a domestic vote with 52%. So there was again a 10% polling miss. And again, this is not a very difficult thing to figure out where to point fingers. So how this polling miss came about, what could be behind it. There are Andrei can probably fill in a greater detail later what were the differences between last year and this year election. There were some significant important differences, but overall the thing that most people were afraid of, and this was a serious thing to be afraid of was the election interference coming from Russia. So there are different angles that Russia used there. One of the major ones, again, Alina can fill in there, is Ilsen's network. So this is a big player, big actor in that scene. But that was not the only thing. And to put it in a little bit broader perspective, so like Kersti was saying before, this is not an isolated issue for Moldova. So that is something that we see. I mean, our organization has been working. Last year, we were working in 8 different European countries. This year, we have worked in about 4, so in a little bit different capacities. So it's not easy to count, but and we see the similar patterns everywhere. So there was a Czech election this weekend, and again, you can see telltale signs of Russia being active, trying to influence the elections. One of the new things, relatively new things, which of course came into spotlight last year with Romanian election, where the surprise candidate Georgescu shot into the lead, and you know, this whole thing ended up with annulment of the election and so on, is that Russia is actively also tapping into diaspora vote in many of those cases, which is new. So that's not something that we have. I mean, it's a recent development, really, from the last year, and it's increasing this year. So this was the situation where we got in. So we were working closely together with WatchDog people who worked with getting the data for us. And so what we did actually many different things, but the main thing was that we tried to give an honest view of what the situation on ground would actually be like if we assume a similar kind of a polling bias as we were experiencing in 2024 in Moldova. And how we did it was that we trained a model to learn the bias from last year, and then we adjusted this year's polls for this bias. And I'm happy to say that we ended up being really, really close to the actual results. So on the election eve, we predicted that BUS would get 44.13% votes. They ended up getting 44.2. 2 weeks before the election, we called that they were at 42%. So in the end, they inched up to 44. So yeah, that was, and then we also try to look into what are the groups that can be influenced both by Russia and by pro-European forces. So what are the, so to say, the low-hanging fruits for both camps? So how do you build resilience into your campaigns, into your elections, and so on and so forth. So, but I'll stop here right now, and so I'll happy to fill in later.
Thank you, Tarmo. This is actually the moment to hand over to Andrei, because this is where the knowledge Tarmo was digging out from the data was used. It was WatchDog who really approached the people in Moldova. And please tell us, what did you do? What did you see? How did you estimate the situation?
Well, thank you. I see a lot of young faces in the audience, so I would start with the fact that not many people know where Moldova is. There actually is a board game called Where is Moldova? And that shows that we are not necessarily the most important geopolitical actor in the world. Although if you look at the recent international coverage and type in Moldova into Google, you're going to see a lot of covering of these elections. And it's interesting because it's a David versus Goliath story. Because a small country has shown twice that democracy can be resilient in the face of Russian hybrid warfare. And we estimate that this election only costed Russia $300 million. Not a small amount of money even for richer countries than Moldova. Where we were at the beginning of this election is that we already knew that they're going to try to buy votes here back home in Moldova. They were trying to use the church against the Moldovan elections, preaching at the altars about how EU is decadent and we should not vote for pro-European parties. They had so-called influencers, and I think Alina could tell more because they actually penetrated this info leaders structures that they produced huge amounts of disinformation. Like they had a structure that amassed more than 1,000 people that needed to produce on separate accounts tens of thousands of pieces of disinformation per week. They have televisions. They have, I don't know, a very complex, I would guess, Telegram infrastructure with an integrated app called Taito, where you log in with your ID and a selfie. I guess not dissimilar to like legal affairs, where you would sign a contract for being a volunteer, actually getting bribed for going to protests or going to vote for a party or another, where you would get lectures on and points on Russian propaganda and how to spread it online further. So this is what we were facing, and I'm going to talk a bit about what WatchDog did around this. We understood that the factor of social media is going to be bigger than ever, and we created a lot of content on a couple of themes that were, in a way, tackling what Russian propaganda was saying on Moldova. For example, one of their biggest fear-mongering was that you shouldn't poke the bear. We are going in towards EU. That means going towards NATO. That means war. Unfortunately, even NATO protection in different countries shows that, for example, penetrating your airspace doesn't mean too much for NATO these days. And for Moldova, it's quite interesting to tackle that element. But what we tried to spin this theme around was that actually getting closer to Russia means getting closer to war, and showcase how Belarus territory is used in the war, how Georgia is used to circumvent sanctions, how Transnistria, the breakaway region of Moldova, I'm pretty sure nobody heard about it, but as most ex-USSR countries, we had this landmine under our country where a breakaway region is used against us. We got around 20 million views in the last month before the election. We targeted it very specifically to 1.3 million people in Moldova. We didn't target everyone, but we think that this is a great result. But there are indications that only on TikTok in the last month they got around 90 million views for a country with the population of roughly 2.5 million of Moldova. That's huge. Everyone got the Russian narratives 5 to 7 times on TikTok, and I'm pretty sure that most people here in the room have heard of TikTok or use it to doom scroll every day. Given time and resources, we could reach that point, but we don't think that we could amass the same type of reaction that they do, because what they do is tap into emotions. They create so much disinformation that it's rather not to inform them people in the wrong way, but to create confusion and to create distrust in any type of messaging that is coming our way. Coming back to what we did, we used stuff that the young people here don't necessarily use, TV stations, and we were present more than 1,000 times on local TV stations in regions at national level and so forth. We used billboards where we drew some caricatures of Mr. Putin being the puppeteer of some faceless politicians, and it was like a Schrödinger, or how that's called, a test where everyone could fit the politicians that they thought that are being conducted by Putin in this game. we used a lot of get out of vote messages around diaspora, which is a stabilizing factor in the case of Moldova, unlike Romania, for example, where they usually vote far right rather than, let's say, more pro-European. And we tried to convey the messaging also through influencers. We used a wide array of people who have a following. We didn't give them information that they should be spreading, but we gave them notes and said, you have creative freedom, do something around this. We think this is important to be spread amongst your followers, and they did so. And we also amassed around 10 million views using the influencers outreach. What we are facing in Moldova is quite easy to replicate anywhere. We saw even on our networks, for example, there is this international media operation called Pravda, where they create a lot of AI slop. And I'm sure many of you know what AI slop is, like poorly written articles or videos made with AI in order to convey their messaging. They're flooding the system with this type of information, some of it to reach directly people, some of which to influence the way engines operate. So if you type in Moldova, you might get the Pravda version of Moldova rather than the actual version of Moldova. And monitoring for Moldova, we saw influences on Polish elections last year, or we saw influences on the Czech elections this year. Everything that is done in Moldova is replicable in other countries and other elections, and you should be aware that elections without foreign interference in Europe most likely won't happen in the next 10 years.
Thank you, Andrei. So now we are reaching there to how to build resilience in building via building awareness in our society, and how investigative quality media is playing the role. And Alina's ZDG's example is one of the best I could bring in that case. So Alina, please explain, how did you see the society and what the journalism should have done, and what did you do?
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody who is here. I know it is rainy and it is rather better to stay at home with a coffee. And I know Moldova is far from anything, and it is difficult to think about Moldova when you are here. That's why I would like to make together with you an exercise. Just imagine that you are now in your house. And just imagine that your house is clean and cozy as you like. And suddenly at one moment, someone starts to throw mud at your house. And it is constant mud thrown and thrown. And at one moment you clean and clean, but then you find yourself or your kids or your family, everybody is covered with mud because there is more and more mud thrown. And at one moment, members of your family start to say, we are so muddy and our neighbor Russia is muddy. Maybe we should unite. We are all in mud, in dirt. Why do we need that Europe? It is too clean, but they also have too many gay, too many LGBT, but Russia has churches and Russia has guns. They may kill anybody. It means power. So this is the metaphor where we live. And we, as investigative reporters, started from the point that we had seen that some people are questioning democracy, and some people started to say that maybe it is better with Russia because Europe is with those standards, with cleaning mafia, cleaning everything. Why do we need clean society? And people were not understanding that this throwing mud army is paid to do so. They thought it is something natural, and it is not. That's what we as investigative reporters started to do some years ago. We started to investigate undercover how Russia is paying people to say that Europe is bad and Moldova has to join Russia back. What did we discover during last elections? We discovered that Russia was paying armies of people and they were carrying bags of cash via planes and buses to come to Moldova and to pay, to bribe everybody to vote against the pro-European referendum and the pro-European candidate, or to vote for the pro-Russian candidate. Then we had seen that police started to do something and to catch those bags of cash. And Moscow didn't stop. They just opened an application they created an application of a Russian bank, and they were sending to Moldovans money via this application. We showed it in our investigation how many people in Moldova started to get cash in via that application. At one moment, police blocked that application. And then the instruction from Moscow came, because we had reporters working undercover in that pro-Russian ring, so we knew everything from inside. And then the instruction from Moscow was use VPN. Then police, as I understood, we had seen blocked VPN. And then the instruction was go to Transnistrian region. Moldova doesn't control Transnistrian region, so you may withdraw cash and we give you more cash and we give you more money. So that showed a lot of Russian involvement in previous elections. Then in November, we finished our elections with the result, as my colleague said, so-so. Pro-European, but very tiny success. And we had seen what happened with Romanian elections. A strange guy, not known, not very much seen in public space before, got the best success. And it was actually because of a digital campaign on TikTok and so on. So for the next elections, we were really afraid that we lose, because Moldova doesn't have any control on social media. Moldova is a small country. Nobody cares from big tech platforms about what happens, what the messages are. And actually, we see a lot that Russia is using American platforms, Chinese platforms to do their campaigns, because Russia pays. And if you put anything paid on Facebook, it will stay there. If I put my opinion, but not paid, nobody see it, or very few people see it. So for this year, Russia started, we had elections in September, and Russia started to work for these elections, to disturb these elections last November, just 2 days after our presidential elections. Why do we know that? Because our reporters were still inside the ring, and 2 days after last year elections, they got a message, hey, we have to start preparing for the next year parliamentary elections in Moldova, and all the instructions started to come together with the money. How the money are coming? I told you that the application was closed, the cash of bags are somehow limited, but they never stop. They are very creative. For this year, they started to use other bank applications, and at one moment, our reporter, and we have the proofs, and we filmed the whole process, how our reporters working undercover were paid. So at one moment, our reporter says to the head of the ring, look, I have to be paid, but I am afraid that police will see that I receive money from Russia. And the guy from Moscow says, yes, the money are coming from Russia, but not directly from Russia. They go via Europe. So you'll receive your money via any European country you want, and nobody will know. So that's why I want that any of us is aware. Russia is already in any European country to send money to the places they want to corrupt. In this case was for Moldova, but be sure if they have the scheme, they will use it. At the end of the day, our reporter just wanted to experiment and said, well, I want to receive my money in Bitcoin, and it was available, possible, and our reporters were paid in Bitcoins, and we have money from Russia. Of course, we exposed at the end everything to the public, but it was clear that we have to fight a digital army, a hidden army that is throwing mud to Moldovan democracy in huge quantities. Sometimes we don't manage to care about our internal things because we have to devote a lot of forces and time to clean ourselves. Russia has only mud to throw. They don't care about their internal democracy. That's why we have to stay together to keep ourselves clean from their interference.
Thank you. Maybe we can think or ask, if I'd ask how Moldova had learned from this experience of 2024, and also internal security organizations who this year just earlier or just shortly before the parliamentary elections actually organized several clear-ups and revealed the plans of several interference. Do you see that your state organizations are also stronger for now, or how you would explain the situation, what you have come through?
For sure, we saw that the police and the National Anti-Corruption Center started being active between the first and the second round of the presidential election last year, when it was clear how big this money scheme was, and that allegedly more than 140,000 people were bribed in the last election. This year, it started way earlier. It started months before the election, although there are still criticism, and something that they should be thinking about not to do in the next elections is taking out some parties for illegal financing. At the last moment, we had two parties that were drawn out of the race in basically the last 3 days of the election. That is not a good practice, and that is something that we were heavily criticized upon. They started communicating better, and I think that was one of the key elements that has thwarted some of the vote buying attempts in Moldova, as in when you see every day people being searched, people being detained for bribing other people or taking those bribes, your availability to do the same is going down. They put on many of the intercepted conversations between these people who are basically afraid but still going in for the scheme. We saw a lot of internal corruption happening, and that is the funnier part, because the money going from Moscow to reach the grandma in Moldova, they would lose up to 60% of the money in between with the intermediaries that were there in the system. We saw, funnily enough, sanctions being applied and working. One of the main culprits in this scheme, Ilan Shor, he's running a coin called A7, A5, basically for laundering Russian money that is under sanctions and buying drones and other equipment from China, not to get Chinese firms under secondary sanctions. A side project for him is buying votes in Moldova, but that shows the complexity of the issue here. After his coin going under US and UK sanctions, it basically fell down 100%. So if people kept their money in that coin, after receiving it, 100 euros turned into €1. And what I think was also paramount is that the whole of society has managed to mobilize themselves, civil society, investigative journalists, even simple people, saying that this is a crucial election and we should be fighting back towards this phenomenon of vote buying and illegal activities. We should be defending our democracy. And that was powerful enough to mobilize people both home and abroad to show up to the polls and to vote.
Yes, I would confirm that we learned a lot from all the attacks of Russia. And now I would confirm that we are more resilient. And it was not easy because our democracy is quite new and we built with a lot of pain during last 30 years, let's say, the right to protest. And it is beautiful to have the right to protest. But some years ago, we had seen that in the center of our capital city, Chisinau, there were daily protests of some strange people who were shouting, "We don't want Europe, we want to unite with Russia." And we knew that it is something wrong, but actually nobody had proven that it is wrong. And actually we couldn't imagine that someone pays so much money to bribe all the protesters to say that. But, you know, the authorities were like, okay, everybody has the right to protest, let them protest if they want to protest. And for me, it was absolutely bad to see that at one stage, when I had seen more and more titles in the international media saying that Moldova wants with Moscow. And I remember talking to one a foreign reporter saying, look, it doesn't mean if... No, but I had seen protesters in the centers for so many days. It means for me that people want to go with Moscow if they go openly in the street. And then we decided to make an undercover investigation at that moment. 4 of our reporters infiltrated into that ring, and they were there, and they had seen how instructions are given. You have to go and shout that. You don't talk to media because you don't know what to say to media. So just skip any media. You just shout, we want with Russia, and come back, and you are paid, and our reporters were paid. And after we discovered and showed to everybody that scheme, finally, the whole society started to talk about, yes, we need the right of protest, but we don't need that someone pays protesters because it is fake. And then we had seen that society is looking somehow else. But also after our investigative stories about how people are bribed to vote, we had seen the beauty of unification of the society against this big bad thing. We had seen how society is sharing an investigative story, how they are discussing that. We had seen that many TV stations are rebroadcasting our investigative story. We had seen that people started to make pressure on police and authorities saying you have to do something because it is corruption and interference from another country. We had seen that police was more and more encouraged by people. They were not criticized that they, kill a protest, but they encouraged to fight with this corruption coming from a foreign actor. And at the end, during elections and after elections, actually, I had seen that, everybody of you had maybe this feeling when the society shows unity, the society shows a kind of success because we all together did something. Civil society, journalists, police, and many were the big majority of citizens.
Thank you. Tarmo, you
I would just like to pick up from what Alina said. In the end, I would have to say that in the data, I would still say the Moldova is far from being a unified country in most of the aspects. So there's a deep divides and strong polarizations. But the thing to keep in mind, what Alina said, I think is really important. So our Moldovan friends are saying that Moldova is so small and doesn't matter. It matters a lot. So in terms of there's a lot to learn from what happened there, and there's a lot to learn for us Estonians, the European countries, because the like Alina said before, what Russia did in Moldova, they are trying to do elsewhere. So they are probably not trying to buy votes in Germany. By the same schemes that were used in different places, but they are trying to use in very inventive ways. So Russia is clearly adopting. We could see that what they tried last year in Moldova, it was different what they tried this year. Just to bring an example, one of the things was that last year European election or the European Union referendum and also the presidential election really boiled down to whether you go for the EU or the the Russian Union, the EU. So that was the thing, and that's where the election tipped towards the EU. So this time around, Russia had a different strategy. So they approached it this way, that they tried to split the pro-European vote. So they had a number of parties that were regularly visiting Moscow and then conducting their strategy meetings there, who were, on the face of it, they were pro-European. They said that we think Moldova should join EU, but we should go carefully. We should be aware of the LGBTQ, and we should stick to our traditions. We should go like, Orban is doing. So we should go with our own proposals and things. We shouldn't rush headlong into the EU, but we are in favor of the EU. So this was the clear strategy of trying to pull over some people who were strongly pro-European, but who didn't particularly like PAS or didn't particularly like Igor Grossu or were concerned about inflation and so on. Another interesting thing, which I think very, very telling. We weren't only polling who's going to win the election. We were conducting also lots of issue polling. So we were looking into narratives and issues that were, spread and held by Moldovan people. And one of the things, there's an interesting sort of a parallel or contrast if you compare Moldova and Georgia. So in Georgia, Georgian Dream has absolute majority of the parliament. So but they are kind of skeptical towards EU, and their opposition is really fractured. So liberal opposition is fractured, and the pro-Russian government is unified and big. In Moldova, it's the other way around. So this is where you have the pro-European PAS has absolute majority, and the pro-Russian opposition is kind of, on the face of it, fragmented. They are less fragmented than you would think, looking at that. But this is the situation. Now, the interesting thing is how Russia spins the story. Mm-hmm. In case of Georgia, they say that this is the will of the people. So Moldovan Dream has absolute support of the absolute majority. So this is democracy. So that should be upheld, and that's something that people in Georgia want. Now, how they approach the Moldovan case is that there's a distinct narrative that is being spread, especially by Russia, also among diaspora. That Maya Sandu is trying to instigate dictatorship. So this is the dictatorship narrative, that she's trying to shut down the opposition, outlaw the other parties, everyone else, and just have the absolute power. And this is something that has a lot of traction also in Moldovan society. It's not that it's only a small part of Russian speakers purchased to this story. So it is being taken seriously, and that's one of the examples how Russia plays it. And again, referring to what Alina pointed out very pertinently before, our societies in both in Moldova and in Europe are ill-equipped dealing with that sort of attacks, because we think the elections and public protests and everything else is sacrosanct. So that's not something that we should touch. So we shouldn't interfere. We shouldn't do with it. This is up to people. And Russia is using it very cynically. So they try to undermine the integrity. So for instance, with what Andrei was mentioning before, in the closing days of the election campaigns, Victoria Fortuna's Moldova Mare was shut down, and the other party was blocked from the electoral bloc of socialists and communists, was blocked from participating. On one hand, this was a loss for Russia, because those were clearly pro-Russian forces, political forces, that were eliminated because of the technical issues of election campaign funding reporting. However, Russia very quickly reacted to this and turned it around and said that this is something that it's shutting down the opposition, again the dictatorship narrative and everything else. So Russia was winning even if it was losing in that sort of situation. So they can very quickly adapt and turn these things around. So they can use this thing to sow distrust, and that's why it's so important. What Alina said before is that building the election resilience around elections should not be something that you deal with the final 30 days when you get into elections. That should start from the next day when the previous election ends. So, and it's becoming ever more important everywhere in Europe. So that's in Romanian case. Andrei was saying before that in Romania the diaspora votes far right. Yes, in the last election, but it didn't used to be that way. Diaspora used to go to USR in spades. So USR won, the Liberal Party in Romania won the elections in diaspora by far. But now suddenly in Germany, majority voted for Georgescu. In Italy, in France. So that was a striking difference that happened in a short period of time. So again, the point that I want to make here or underscore is that this is something where, like Alina was saying, Russia started 2 days after the last election. We should too.
Yeah, this is the case of building resilience throughout the year and clock in our society, and the awareness what is at stake and how to protect our hearts and minds. So, is there any opportunity or wish that you would like to ask any question from our participants, or we will? There is one.
There's another.
There is another.
Yeah, there's one.
And there. And there.
Is there a
is there any microphone there in the public's?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Alina knows that.
Thank you very much for the question. Yeah, it's because we generalize somehow, and then we think that everybody in Moldova is corrupt and willing to take money. Well, from one point of view, of course, Moldova is a poor country and people have less incomes, and maybe Russia will not manage to do that in a rich European country. But from other point of view, this is a classic and very deep manipulation. So, for instance, in our last investigation, we show that Russia didn't come to the ring and say, I pay you and you go and vote against Russia. No, they said in November last year, dear people, we offer you a training. We just want that you are good on social media, you know how to promote yourself and your messages. So we organize a team of digital training, and who will be the best will get even bonuses. And this training is for free. We offer you all this knowledge. And people were gathered and they were provided knowledge how to open 1 or 2 accounts on TikTok or on Facebook. How do you put, maybe you open a fake account, but how do you make that people believe that you are a real person? And then there is a contest within the ring. Now we post things about the Happy New Year with the music, and let's see the impact. And now we in Moldova have a problem with gas. The gas is not cheap and the authorities promised cheaper gas. So let's make all together a post about the gas, that we want a cheaper gas. And then the next day they make analysis and say, look, you are great. You are doing great. You are the best social media people we know. So who will get the highest audience next time gets a free mobile phone. And then people work to get this prize. You know, there is a competition. There is an alive group. People are kept together, and they are not, there is no criticism. There are only beautiful words. And then later they say, okay, let's criticize a bit this government because they don't do that. And you are paid for that because you are doing great results. And at the end, you find yourself a kind of member of this group. And then they say, we provide you more money if you bring more people to this group. And then I say, okay, I'll just get more money. And at the end, they receive money for the vote only at the end, but they make people devoted to this group during a year or months or maybe many years. So be careful. It starts with something innocent.
There, I see you.
Yeah.
What has the reprisal been from Russia for the candidates that have lost, or for the, shall we say, the 300 million euros that you said were wasted? Because I'm assuming Russia doesn't like that. So have you seen some abandonment of those candidates, or considering them not viable for future actions? Thank you.
I think at this point we see first reaction towards Transnistria, that is has gas for less than 10 days left, provided by Russia. Transnistrians voted in a smaller number than last time. There were some let's say questionable tactics on the Transnistrian vote. The voting stations were moved from the security zone, this zone on the administrative border with Transnistria, inwards into Moldova in order to secure them. And according to the police, to document better the coming to the organized transport to these polling stations. But it's clear that Transnistrians didn't provide the numbers that Russia wanted to have, and we have now a growing humanitarian crisis there. But we know that Putin always delays these types of sanctions. We might be seeing a shift in between the leadership of this pro-Russian bloc, but there's a crisis in that bloc anyway. They all of their leaders are in a way reshuffled, reused. They even brought back a prime minister from the 2000s to run in this campaign, showing that there is a crisis in leadership in that bloc, and that also contributed to their poor results. But I think Tarmo also wants to.
Yeah, I want to address the premise of that question. I don't know if the amount was 300 million or less or more, but what I sort of want to challenge there is that I'm not entirely sure that Russia sees it as money wasted. I think it's much more likely that they see it as money invested. So yes, this time it didn't turn out this way. It went better for them in Georgia. And they are not done. There will be another elections. There will be election coming in Latvia next year. So they can use what they learned and what they developed in Moldova in subsequent places and elections. And as we know, Russia has a lot of money, and they are willing to throw it around to purchase influence, to gain influence. So they can, what they learned in case of Romanian and Moldovan elections working with diaspora, they can use in European elections, as they did in Czech election case. I think it's useful to keep in mind there that this was not a single one-off thing, that you throw 300 million, you hope to purchase a country. I mean, Putin certainly would have loved if it had gone this way, but I'm quite sure that there are smart people around who planned this thing, and they know that it's a probabilistic thing. So it was close. It was actually really close. They got close. This time they didn't succeed. They will try harder next time.
Yeah, I wanted to add that we had seen some movements and change and shifts around the Putin circle, because we knew that some vice presidents are responsible for an area like Moldova. The biggest challenge was the network of Ilan Shor, who is very close to Putin. And we as journalists had seen things in the Ilan Shor digital ring. There were many voices saying, oh, the money are not coming anymore. We don't know when the next payments will be done. It means Shor might have troubles there in Moscow, and he doesn't have that big money to send to Moldova again. But it doesn't mean that if Ilan Shor didn't manage to do whatever Putin wanted, it doesn't mean that Putin stops. He will find other people, or he will put more people to work, or he will involve more money. He will change his strategy, and I am sure he will improve his strategy to get troubles to Moldova. So we have to be aware all the time.
Thank you. We have 2 more questions and then now 3rd, and we know that the time is over. So let's take all the questions and have the final circle, and then thank you so much.
Yes, so Uldis Mikls from the MFA of Latvia and former ambassador of Latvia to Moldova. Congratulations, first and foremost, on the results of elections. I think first from the point of view of stability of policy, very important, and second, successfully countering the Russian interference. And I think the fact that the so-called team which worked with Moldovan elections at the Kremlin administration was fired straight after, that just shows that success. I'm interested in your view, how applicable are the lessons learned from these elections to another countries? And perhaps in particular, if I look to another actor of where Russia wants to keep its influence, and that's Armenia, where elections are coming next June. So how applicable those lessons learned are? Thank you.
Okay. Please. Yes, go ahead.
Hello, I'm representing Journal Geopolitics from Georgia. As you mentioned, Georgia's and Moldova's cases are 2 different cases because Moldova has pro-European government and Georgia does not have these governments. But my question is there any specific lesson Georgian opposition or civil society can learn from these elections, since elections in Georgia is no longer fair or meaningful at all? So what would be your answer to this question? Thank you.
And then the last question from Martins, please.
Yeah, very interesting panel. Thank you for your insights. I have a rather possibly politically incorrect question, but I will go with it anyway. You talked much about what civil society did, what investigative journalists did, but the election results, do they resemble in any way, or if they do, then to what extent, the actions by the actual party, by the government, by president? How would you characterize those? Were those on spot? What were the? How would you evaluate the communication, the strategic communication? Me representing NATO Center of Excellence for Strategic Communication, so I would want to hear your views on that. Thank you.
Thank you for these questions. Really, really brilliant ones. So let's start from Andrei and come from to here and add up whatever you have on in your heart still to say, and then.
Starting with lessons learned, I would start with everything that is exportable from Moldova. If you have fringe parties that promote some kind of nationalistic view or let's say, mainstream view, it's most likely that Russia will try to fund them. And in the case of Moldova, one of these parties was a party that was claiming that part of Ukraine should be Moldovan, because I don't know when in history it
at times of Rurik.
Yeah, same type of logic. Yeah, it belonged to Moldova. When you have a strong religious organization in your country, it might be weaponized against you, and it doesn't necessarily need to be linked to Russia, by the way, because in the case of Moldova, there's a direct link, but it's not necessarily. It needs to be corruptible, and it needs to be able to be weaponized against your country. Regional grievances, if you have a region that might want bigger autonomy or something linked to it, it also could be used. And somebody was asking about Armenia. In the case of Armenia, we studied that case, and we are in contact with our colleagues from Armenia. And I think the internal displaced people in Armenia could be a force that could be exploited by Russians, because they have their grievances towards the government, and they could be weaponized against the democratic process in Armenia as well. technological elements of it. The Telegram network more for organizing rather than for sending messages. You don't need to have big channels that promote propaganda. You need the same type of organization that you listen to pro-Russian rhetorics and you sign in to go to protests and get different amounts of money, depends on the region how much. The possibilities for using crypto, especially in the last period of time, has grown. And on the positive side, I would mention the participation and the voice of civil society, getting, for example, Georgians to believe that elections actually matter, and even there's institutionalized bribing in Georgia for different categories of people that get handouts from the government to vote. Even the protest movement could be re-energized by some results in elections. And even if it seems that elections are already lost, you should be still fighting to raise your voice and to raise the dignity of the people, and the revolution of dignity actually showed that.
Yeah, to pick up from that, so you just had your local elections in Georgia, so I guess this was a moment of reflection of where the country is and then how things are. So clearly there's a difference. So there's a distinction. So once you have lost the meaningful free elections, then there's a whole big hole to climb out from to get back where you can start having these sorts of conversations that Moldovans are lucky to have right now. So yes, I think it's a fair point that it's a different situation. I was just using it as a contrast between these two different places. I absolutely agree with everything that Andrei said. So there's a lot of things to learn. It's not one sort of a set of tools that Russia is using in different places. One of the things that Alina was mentioning before, that what Russia is clearly doing is that they are trying to create this false analogy and say that all democracies are somehow corrupt, and there are no fair elections, and everything is a power grab, and so why should you care? So worry about what's the price of the gas, and use your right to oppose the government and voice your dissent. And they are trying to do this everywhere. In Germany, in France right now, as they are trying to blow at these embers of discontent and try and see if they can get the flame out somewhere, undermine the integrity, undermine the trust in public institutions, in democratic processes, and so on. Say that everything is corrupt, everything is possible to purchase, and you shouldn't look at Russia as being a bad example. Everyone is the same everywhere. And they are getting a lot of success. They are making inroads by... we have this thing in Estonia right now going on where Estonia took a rather strict stance on the Russian Orthodox Church. And that is, again, something that is being used against us, not only by Russian Orthodox people. It is a contentious issue. It's an actual question to ask. How do you balance the religious freedoms with democracy, demands of democracy? But this is the attack vector that is being used, so you should never forget that.
Thank you. Shortly, the Armenia question. Look for the Russian money. Be careful where the Russian money are. And specifically for Armenia, the Russian bags of cash were coming via Armenia to us because Moldova doesn't have, since the Russian war in Ukraine started, Moldova doesn't have any direct flight with Russia. And the way to fly from Russia, very much used, is Moscow, Yerevan, Chisinau. And a lot of money were coming this way. If they come via Armenia, be careful now that the money will stop in Yerevan. And the authorities should pay attention to that. And it was also mentioned the role of church. congratulations to Estonia that you don't have so many issues with Russian church in Estonia, but Moldovans and Armenians have kind of very strong tradition of Russian-controlled church in the country. We had seen last summer issues with the pro-Russian church and some people arrested. So work on this because it is really important. With Georgia, actually very sad about Georgia. We as journalists had to learn from Georgia. We had seen what happened in Georgia, and I just stressed everybody I could stress in the country, saying, look, Georgian independent media is under arrest, under block. They have to go in exile to do their job. I was born in Moldova and worked forever in this country to build this democracy. I don't want to be arrested now. I don't want to go in exile. So let's do something, we avoid this. So it was a sad lesson, but we used to stress people to understand the risk for democracy. Now, as a journalist, I just would encourage Georgian journalists to show what Russian money are doing to destroy democracy in Georgia. And for the last question, I'm not here to praise Moldovan government, but we had seen a lot of progresses in explaining what happens, in explaining the risks, and in explaining what the government is doing, why police is doing that. And we had seen that the image of police, despite all those arrests and despite of those unpleasant movement in street protests and political parties, we had seen that the image of police is rising and the image of elections bodies is increasing. And I think this is the right way to clean your house from Russian mud.
Thank you. Thank you for all your attention, and you have stayed, although we are over time. And thank you for our distinguished panelists. And just to answer this Stratcom question from as a final word from my side, that thank you for all your insight and support for whole of society approach who have done these things, because of course it is not investigative journalism alone, it is not NGOs alone, it is everybody, included government communication and Stratcom, to build awareness and strength in our societies. So that is the reason why PRACnet is also working there in Moldova. Thank you so much, and have a nice conference.